Okay, and we are live. Absolutely disastrous start. Took me hours to get on the live stream and then I broke my mic in the interim. Regardless, got a tasty beverage, blackcurrant lemonade, a little bit of soda, CJI this weekend, UFC and ADCC. So big weekend of combat sports. And I'm ready to get into it. Long day of editing, long day of work. Happy to do it, but happy to start streaming as well. Which leads me to my first question. How are we all doing? Okay. I need to have a couple of zen deep breaths after I just broke the mic. Upsetting times. But it could be a lot worse. It was just one of the attachments. On to more positive and upbeat things. I'm going to do this live stream. Going to tune into the CJI and enjoy the weekend. What are we talking about today? We are talking about UFC 305. We are talking about UFC 307. And we are talking about everything in between. So let's start off with Khalil Roundtree first and foremost on that question. And then we'll get into the predictions for tomorrow. So my opinions on Khalil Roundtree getting the title shot. First and foremost, absolutely out of nowhere. The reason I say that is because I actually watched the Joe Rogan interview with Khalil Roundtree and Joe, and he said with everything going on, the earliest it looked like he was going to return was around February. So you can imagine my surprise when I saw this reveal today that he'll be fighting Alex Pereira for the light heavyweight title. But when you actually dive into what happened with Khalil Roundtree, I'm actually glad that they scrapped his punishment, because when you hear the details of it, it is quite ridiculous. And I think sometimes they should do these things on a case-by-case basis. I don't think it should be as regimental as it sometimes is. Now, I'm not saying open the floodgates to everything, but when you look at some cases, a bit ridiculous, and his was one of them. So I'm happy you got the title shot first and foremost, and then stylistically, absolutely incredible matchup. And a lot of people are saying the UFC are protecting him from Uncle Ive. I don't think that's the case at all. I don't think Uncle Ive sells as much. I don't think Uncle Ive's as interesting of a matchup. And also, I don't think Uncle Ive's as dangerous, to be perfectly honest. I think he's got the Russian Dagestan treatment from the fans when they look at him. Don't get me wrong, he's talented, he's skilled, he can grapple, and he can strike. I don't think he can strike to the level of Alex Pereira, and he has never had a professional submission, I don't believe. So this narrative that he would just take Alex Pereira down and maul him, I think is actually a bit of a weak play when you look into it. Yes, I do remember your deal with Israel Adesanya. I said if John Anik doesn't pronounce his name like that, I'll never say it again. And I mean that. So we'll have a see tomorrow, won't we? Do I have another channel? I have multiple channels. YouTube, I'm live streaming on YouTube at the moment. I'm live streaming on my TikTok as well. I've got Instagram. You'll find me on absolutely everywhere. So getting into my predictions for tomorrow. I've broke this fight down a million times, and it's a really, really tough one to call. Stylistically, it's just a tough one to call because Dricus does have the ability to mix in his takedowns. He does have the power striking. But then on the flip side, you have the sharpshooting of Izzy. You have the ability to counter strike that I don't think Dricus quite has. And then you have the fantastic defense in regards to the grappling with Israel. So I do think they'll neutralize each other on the ground. That's if one another don't hurt their opponent. But when it comes to the feet, I'm just wondering. The more I watch Dricus in the warm-ups, the more I think about him now being a new champion. Do I think he's going to be a little bit more calculated on the feet? Not that he doesn't fight with fight IQ, because he does. But are we going to see a world in where he's a little bit more reserved and he doesn't rush quite as aggressively? Because I was watching him on the pads and he just seemed a little bit more comfortable in his stance. And when you get that championship belt and you get that confidence, I think he's going to have that confidence now, especially after seeing Sean Strickland do that to Izzy. And especially after he's had a fight with Sean Strickland, to say, you know what? I'm comfortable. I don't really need to blitz in. I can actually play this at all ranges. I'm just going to be interested to see if he does that. Thank you for the roses. I very much appreciate it. Okay. We've got a couple here. Am I still in Thailand? I am not still in Thailand. GSP or John Jones? I'd probably say John Jones, to be honest. Who do I think will watch this CJI? Will win the CJI? I think the Rotolo's under 80 is the obvious pick. I think Kai and always get their names. Ty and Cade are definitely going to be in the final. Not definitely, but I think there's a higher possibility. And I think they'll go to war in the final against each other, which will be just as fun. And then the over 80s, I think Luke Rockhold's going to surprise a few people. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not as well versed in grappling as I am MMA, so I only know the bigger names. And I only know the bigger narratives. But I do think Luke Rockhold's going to surprise a few people. Just listening to Nicky Rod talk about training with him, talking about Craig Jones and listening to him train with Luke Rockhold, I think it's going to be difficult. And then you have a look who's in that bracket as well. You've got Nicky Rodriguez, who is a phenomenal wrestler. And I think it's the wrestlers that someone like Luke Rockhold will do better with. You hear Craig Jones talking about he always does best when people take bad shots, the guillotines, the darces. I don't know. I think probably Nicky Rodriguez and one of the Rotolos is who I'm going to go with there. Urseg or Kai Kara France. I think that this one's going to stay standing. I think it's going to be a kickboxing match for the most part. And I think it's actually going to be even in a closer range than that. And I think it's actually going to be at a boxing range most of this fight. And we know that Kai Kara France likes to favour that overhand right. And rightly so. It's a very dangerous weapon. And it's one that he's had a lot of success with. But if he does telegraph that, and if he continually throws that, I think that check left hook that we saw against, name slipped my mind completely, Matt Schnell from Urseg, I think that's going to be on. And I also just think in regards to the slickness and combination boxing, I think Urseg's going to have the advantage there. So I'm going to favour Urseg just in regards to momentum as well. You could look at that and say Kai's had a long time off. He's going to evolve his game. He's going to be fresh coming into this matchup. Very possible. And of course, he's got the CKB boys on the card as well. So it'll be an interesting one. What do I think of Izzy crying? I think that's what happens when you bring up family and then you have someone who is quite an emotive person anyway. And you have someone like DDP who is no holds barred on the mic. So, bit of a rough one. Thank you, Volkanovski, for the gifts, my friend. I appreciate it. Little football. Talking of football, we've got a Premier League tomorrow. Or even today, even. Did I see the press conference? I did. I did see the press conference. Or at least I saw the highlights. It was on in the middle of the night. That's the thing with DDP. You say DDP fights so clumsy, I don't know if he can just blitz in on it, is he? Well, this is the thing. His style looks clumsy, but there is method to the madness. Now, even though there is method to the madness, and even though he is very skilled and he makes it work for him, he of course still has lapses in his concentration. He does float his chin when he rushes in. He does sometimes charge in on the centre line, and on the flip side of that, when he wings those right hands, or left hands even, when he steps through the stances, you do see him dip off quite harshly, quite aggressively. Now, every time I see that, of course, he may be able to get away with it throughout the fight, and he may be able to get away with it against a Sean Strickland, who's not going to be able to capitalise. But Izzy most certainly will. And I do see a world in where Izzy's not going to back up and move laterally as much. He's going to stand his ground and look to throw combinations in the pocket. I'm thinking Paulo Costa. I'm thinking Robert Whittaker. We've seen it in those fights. And an advantage that Izzy has that Dricus doesn't have is he can fight in that grey area between defense and offense, where he can still be relatively safe in the pocket and throw his counters. Whereas Dricus is much more cover, attack, cover. And it can work well for him. You think of the Trevin Giles fight. He does the exact same thing as Izzy against Alex Pereira to a certain extent. He shells up against the cage, takes the damage. As soon as Trevin Giles is finished with his combination, he blitzes him and boom, knocks him out without even his feet being planted. So that tells you the power of Dricus du Plessis. That's why this is such an interesting fight, because there's so many ways this can go. So many ways this can go. And of course, Izzy's had such a long time off as well. Aura points. Thank you, Volkanovski, the best. I appreciate that. Do I think Khalil poses any threat to Poatan? 100% I do. I actually think he's the toughest matchup for him at the moment, to be honest. Because you know they're going to fight at that sort of kickboxing range. And you will see them in the clinch. And if you do see them in the clinch, you're going to have to give the advantage there to Khalil Roundtree. But exiting the clinch, Alex always does a phenomenal job of finding those left hooks, which is where the danger is going to be. Sometimes defensively, he can be a little bit vulnerable in the pocket. So Khalil Roundtree may be able to find some success there. But Alex really does have that momentum. But so does Khalil. They've both had multiple finishes recently. They're both coming off good wins, solid wins. And they're both going to be very, very confident coming into this fight. Stylistically, it's going to be the perfect matchup for either person. And this is exactly where they'd want it. So yeah, I do think it's good. Who wins AJ Fury? I'll answer that quickly. I probably would say AJ at the moment, just with how he's punching, just with his form, just with his confidence, and just with where they're both at in their careers. I think you'd have to probably favour AJ. A couple of fights ago, I would not have said that whatsoever, but he's really spun it around. It'll be interesting to see where Fury is when he comes back in the rematch against Usyk. He can win that. I mean, the first fight was pretty flipping close, so it's not crazy to suggest that. But, yeah, interesting one. Izzy is too emotional. He's going to make so many errors. Yeah, I've seen that narrative a lot of times. And, I mean, you're not wrong for suggesting he's emotional, but I don't know if that necessarily is going to play into the fight. We've seen this many times over the years, many emotional build-ups. I would say the Alex Pereira fight, I wouldn't say it was more so or less so, but it wasn't a million miles away just because of the narratives coming into those fights. So I do think he's emotional, but I think he's such a professional. I think he's so well versed in this type of mental and physical warfare that I don't know if it's going to impact his performance too much. But we will see, because there's every chance. There is every chance. Uncle has been done dirty. Yeah. Has he? To be honest, I don't know if he has. Everyone's quite upset about this, but it was quite obvious to see for a while. He doesn't do a phenomenal job on social media, and he's not always that active. Who was his last win? I feel like I'm missing it majorly, but that's my point. What martial art shall I start out with? What are your goals? Are you looking to become MMA World Champion of the World? In which I would probably suggest MMA. Are you trying to start off with a sport you'd like to get in shape? In which case I'd say do something that you enjoy. Li Jingliang versus Carlos Prates. I cannot pick over Carlos Prates. I think Li Jingliang probably has the grappling advantage. I don't know if he has the wrestling to get it there. And I don't know if he'll be able to find the hips or the legs of Carlos, because he is so long and he does a fantastic job at using that length. You will see him, he often engages the lead hand battle. He uses every weapon that you'd love to see from a southpaw. The straight left is like a piston. He uses that step-in knee beautifully that we saw him get a TKO victory with. He mixes up his levels. He uses feints. His striking is very crisp. And I think it's just going to be a slight level above what Li Jingliang can compute Although I think he's a very dangerous striker and he's very much in this fight. Don't get it twisted. Do not get it twisted. It's going to be an interesting one. Appreciate the roses and the footballs, Volkanovski. Appreciate it, my friend. Right, let me scroll up a couple. We've got a few here. Okay. Jeez, we've got loads. Okay. Thoughts on Jack Jenkins? I flipping love Jack Jenkins. I'm a massive fan of Jack Jenkins. Really, really like watching his style. It's very Muay Thai based and it's very danger based. Heavy low kicks, elbows, big shots. Loves to fight in the pockets. Loves to throw combinations and has broke 5 of his last 6 opponents' legs. That's just an insane statistic. And I believe one of those opponents, he broke his leg and his jaw. So the man is always must-see TV. Yeah, you're right. Did he really bring up family? I mean, he did, technically. He didn't say anything that was incorrect. I guess he loosely brought them up. But yeah, not really. This is a good point. Not really. He didn't say, your mum this, your dad this, your wife this, your dad. None of that. Just said, used to have servants, of which he did. Like you said, so, yeah. Is his takedown defense underrated? I'm not sure if it is, to be honest. I'm not sure if it is. I think a lot of people know he's very, very good when it comes to his takedown defense. I do think the takedown narrative is always used a lot with him. It's one thing to say take down a striker. It's another thing to do it. And when that striker's the likes of Israel Adesanya, when that striker's the likes of Sean O'Malley is a good example, these fighters can move out of both stances. They can move laterally and move in backwards. They can float backwards and sting you with shots, move laterally and sting you with shots, and they're switching between orthodox and southpaw. So it's very hard to get a read and a rhythm on time in those entries, especially for the single legs. And then especially with those strikers that show a lot of feints and fakes as well. These guys will show knees, uppercuts, show level changes. They'll do a great job at down blocking because they have quite a good use of a low hand position anyway. So it's one thing to say take them down, it's another thing to actually go and do it. And when you're having to cross that void, as Demetrius Johnson would say, and you're level changing onto danger, and you're amidst the chaos, it's not easy. It is not easy. Do I think Leon could get the title back? I do think he can get the title back. I think he needs to go out there against Ian Gary. I think he needs to have a big build-up, have a good amount of animosity on the line. The UFC run a nice narrative on it. I think it needs to be on a big event, and I think he needs a big stoppage. And with that, I think he reinserts himself back in the picture, for certain. I think he reinserts himself straight away with a big win over someone like Ian Gary. He may need one more, but I doubt it. If he goes out there and stops the undefeated, very famous Ian Gary, I think that's enough for him. Thank you for the lit up rose. I appreciate it. And the ladybugs. Appreciate the gifts. Means a lot. What's happening? Aldemar. Fights are tomorrow. Walker was his last win. He's been flatlined by everyone recently. Thank you for reminding me. Johnny Walker. Yeah, that's the thing, right? Johnny Walker's kind of like that girl in the village at the moment. You know the one everyone sort of little bit like that, unfortunately. Has gone away and worked on his wrestling at AKA. It's like when that girl goes and gets a relationship for the first time and she goes a bit MIA. But the jury is still out. Let's have a look what she's like after the breakup. You know? Let's have a look. Oh, to optimize. Disconnected. Okay. Said I was disconnected there for a second. Okay. How do I feel about Hangman? It's a difficult matchup, don't get me wrong, because anytime Mateusz Gamrot fights anyone, it's a tricky matchup. The man's an absolute dog. He's got no quit, phenomenal conditioning, and he's got some of the best wrestling in the division. And he's got one of the best single leg entries in the UFC. So it's a difficult matchup, Dan Hooker. Regardless, it's a difficult matchup for Gamrot. Dan Hooker's a very nasty matchup for anyone. He's 6 foot tall and a very dangerous striker. He can keep you at bay with teeps. He does throw really nice uppercuts. He does throw nice knees. So again, like what we spoke about with Sean O'Malley in Israel, it's hard to level change onto Dan Hooker. And of course the narrative's going to be, well, he got taken down and submitted by Islam. Yeah. Yes. He came off the couch on a few days' notice, not training properly, took a fight with the pound for pound champ and got submitted. Yes. That tells us nothing about this fight whatsoever. So, can he get taken down and submitted? Yeah, sure. But people are looking at this fight as if that's a foregone conclusion because we've seen that before. I would say that you're looking at this fight wrong if you think that's the only way this plays out. Because Dan Hooker's a very, very difficult matchup. And just listening to his interviews recently, it sounds like he's having a much more calculated approach in his game now. A lot more cerebral. Understanding that he can't just walk forward, walk into danger and out-hustle his opponents. He has to be a little bit sharper than that. Not only for his physical health, but also for putting together good momentum in the division. And he knows he's not far away from a title shot because he's really not. He's like 1.5 fights away, you know. He's one fight, and if timing and dropouts go well for him, he's in. But realistically, he's 2 fights away from the title. So with a big win here, he's not far away at all. So he knows he has to fight sensibly, and he knows that Gamrot's been hurt in his last few fights. Let's not forget that. Let's not forget that. He's been hurt. And I can't see Gamrot hurting Dan Hooker. But I can see Dan Hooker hurting Gamrot. What are my top 5 most skilled fights to watch? Good question. Off the top of my head, what's happening, Toby? 121k followers. Yeah. Don't really know what it was last time you saw, to be honest. Don't really obviously know what it is, but I've become very desensitized. Honestly, I have no idea if that's even a good amount anymore, or what is a good amount. But what was I going to say? Top 5 most skilled fighters. I'm going to put Tom Aspinall in there, Sean O'Malley in there, Islam Makhachev in there, John Jones in there. Bit of a rogue one. I really like watching Aljamain Sterling. It's not that rogue. 70. You was hit. Last you saw, I was at 70. Really? Jesus Christ. When was the last time you came on my account? Year ago. I actually don't know when I would have been on 70, to be honest. I actually have no idea. I would say I'm probably, on average, probably growing about, I don't know, a couple of thousand a week, maybe? A couple of thousand followers a week? 1,500 maybe, on average? Not too sure. Some weeks more, sometimes less. Up to about 30 million views a month, maybe? 30 million on TikTok? Something like that. On average, maybe 25 million a month. 4, 8, 12. No, maybe a little bit less. Maybe on average about 20, 22 million. Not too bad. Hangman Izzy for the win. New Zealand Kiwis. Yeah. Oh, it's going to be a difficult one. I even think they're going to get a clean sweep or get clean swept. I think it's going to go one of two ways. It's going to be a dicey one. Thoughts on UFC 307? Yeah, they dropped a bit of a banger on us. And you know what's funny about that? Is I actually dropped the exclusive. I didn't see or hear anywhere on the internet about Juliana Pena having a title fight on October 7th. And the reason I know that is because I bumped into her at the gym in Manchester in the Fighters Hotel about 2 a.m. She was doing a workout with her daughter, and I was doing a workout and then about to have a sauna. And I had a little chat with her, and I asked her about her recent interview on MMA Hour, and she said, I lied to Ariel Helwani. I wasn't really going to New York to go to the dentist. I was going for a physical assessment because I'm fighting in October the 7th. I was just like, oh, I don't know if I meant to know that or if that's public knowledge. And I didn't really make a big song and dance out of it because I didn't want to. I didn't want to be that guy, to be honest, because I didn't ask her if I could say anything. But I did drop it on my podcast. I know a lot of people don't really listen to that podcast yet. So I thought, you know what? Who is listening? They could get a little juicy scoop. And a couple of people got that scoop early doors. So yeah, found out that one pretty early. But some really fun fights on that card. Really fun fights on that card. I like the fact that Jose Aldo's back. I think he can beat anyone, to be honest, at the moment. I think he proved that when he had a razor close loss to Merab Dvalishvili. It was almost a draw. It was so close. Deserve it. Oh, thank you, mate. I appreciate it. How was Thailand? I absolutely loved it. I'm going to go back. I lost my rose toy. What's a rose toy? Got that signed poster. Went to the fight highlight. Was Molly spinning back elbow? Yes. That was the first ever event I went to. Wasn't a bad event to go to either, was it? Quite an incredible one, to be honest. Quite an incredible one. Can't compete to me when it comes to MMA knowledge. Okay, I won't compete. Have I lost faith in Leon? No, I haven't. I haven't lost faith in Leon. Just, it was a bad performance last time. It was a frustrating performance, to be honest. Watching it live, it was frustrating. Because you could see what was happening. You could see the adjustments he needed to make. And you could see the things that he needed to prevent. Obviously, watching it in the stands is a lot easier to dictate what to do rather than being in front of him. But it was frustrating. He kept getting backed up against the cage. It was frustrating that he kept going a super high guard, and then it was just a frustrating performance. It just was. But yeah, that was a fantastic card. Probably not going to get many better than that, really. You're probably not going to be able to see a much better card than that in person. Realistically. What's the time? Has anyone actually got a time? Yeah, that's the reason I asked for the time, is because I do want to go and watch CJI. I actually do want to see it. And I don't actually know how the layout is in regards to who's competing when, but I do want to go and watch that. Right, let me have a look at the time. Thoughts on Cage Warriors lightweight prospect? You thought you got me. Nice one. Never. Nicky Rod's about to fight. Okay, yeah, I'm about to dip. Because I want to see Nicky Rod. Okay, in fact, fuck it. Let's run it on a live stream. Let's get it on a live. Let's not mess about. Let's get it on the live. Let's get it on the line. Thank you, mate. Appreciate it. Need to get Google up first. Okay, right, let's get this up. Oh, it's on YouTube, isn't it? Mate, there's me looking for a STREAM, and I'm realising flipping Craig Jones is that guy, and he's all on YouTube. What a flipping legend. This is exactly why he's a marketing genius. People putting it behind paywalls and making it hard for fans to watch it. That's not what you do when you're trying to grow something. At all. At all. That is not what you do. It's just stupid. ADCC putting shit behind a paywall. Where's the actual live stream? Oh, here we go. 73k people watching. Jesus. That's a lot of people on a live stream. Alright, we're in. Bosh. Easy that, wasn't it? What time's it in the UK? About 11:15, I think it is. something like that. Whereabouts am I from? London. London, Essex. What time's the Craig Jones fight? I assume it's not today. I would guess. I don't know that. 3:08. Remind me what 3:08 is, because I always forget. Shame. Oh, shame. I thought you said same. Alright, Nicky Rodriguez. Here we go. We're in. Thank you, Mason. I appreciate that, my friend. Much appreciated. I'm going to have to quit this YouTube live stream because I actually really want to dial in to watch this match, to be honest. Alright. I'm going to love everyone and leave everyone on the YouTube live stream. Peace.